It often begins in a small, ordinary way. Someone asks how you're feeling, not because something is wrong, not because there's a crisis, just because it's the normal thing to ask. You hear the question clearly. You understand what it's asking for. An opening, a little truth placed outside, something shared. Inside, you pause, not in confusion, in recognition. You do have feelings. They're there. They move through you every day. You feel tired. You feel pleased. You feel irritated. You feel touched by small things you never mention. Nothing is missing inside you, but you don't feel the pull to explain any of it. So you answer simply, "I'm okay," or "It's been fine." The words are true enough. They do their job. They keep things moving. From the inside, this doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like care. Your feelings are intact where they are. They don't need air. They don't need witnesses. You notice how often sharing feelings is treated like honesty, as if what stays inside is incomplete, as if emotions only count once they're spoken. When you don't open up, there's often a small shift in the room, a pause, a look. Someone might ask again, softer this time, or with concern, or with encouragement. You feel that moment clearly. The expectation, the gentle pressure, the idea that openness is the right response. Inside, you stay still, not tense, not defensive, just steady. You may have learned, slowly, that your feelings change once they're shared. They get shaped by reactions, by advice, by other people's comfort or discomfort. Sometimes they turn smaller, sometimes they turn heavier. Inside you, they feel cleaner, more yours. You don't feel lonely with them. You don't feel closed off. You feel accompanied by yourself. You still care about others, you still listen, you still show up. You just don't place your inner life on the table automatically. Sometimes people misunderstand this. They assume you're distant or guarded or afraid of vulnerability. But from the inside, none of that fits. It doesn't feel like fear, it feels like privacy. The kind that lets things breathe without being handled. You notice that not sharing doesn't stop your feelings from moving. They still rise, they still settle, they still pass. They just do it quietly, without becoming conversation. When the moment ends, you don't replay it. You don't wonder if you should have said more. You don't feel unfinished. You continue with your day. Your feelings remain with you, steady and unchanged. They are not hidden, they are simply not offered. And inside, that choice feels natural, calm, protective. As if some things are meant to stay where they are, not because they're fragile, but because they're already whole. Jung would stay close to what it feels like inside when you don't share your feelings. Not the reasons you give, not the explanations others expect, just the inner experience itself. When you keep your feelings private, there is often a sense of containment. Your emotions don't spill out, they stay gathered, held, not trapped, just kept. Inside, this can feel steady. Your feelings move, but they move within you. They don't need to travel outward to be real. You notice them rise and fall without maiming them. Jung would say this is not absence of emotion, it's relationship to emotion. You are in contact with what you feel, but you are not handing it over. There is often safety here. Not the kind that comes from being reassured by others, but the kind that comes from trusting your own inner space. You know where your feelings are. You don't worry about losing them once they are spoken. Some feelings feel clearer when they remain inside. They stay closer to their original shape. Once shared, they can be misunderstood, reshaped, or softened to fit the moment. Inside, they stay honest. Jung would notice that privacy can be a form of care. Care for yourself, care for what is still forming. Not everything inside is ready to be seen. Not everything benefits from light. There can also be quiet strength here. When you don't share automatically, your inner life doesn't depend on response. You don't wait for approval or comfort to know what you feel. At times, you may notice tension from the outside world pressing in. Questions, invitations, expectations. Inside, you feel the boundary clearly. Not rigid, just present. Jung would say this boundary protects the self. It keeps the inner world from becoming scattered or overexposed. It allows feelings to do their own work in their own time. You may also notice that privacy helps you listen to yourself more closely. Without explaining, you stay with the feeling longer. You notice its texture, its movement, how it changes without interference. This doesn't mean you never share. It means sharing becomes a choice, not a reflex. When you do speak, it comes from clarity, not pressure. Inside, this often brings calm. Your emotional life feels less reactive, less pulled by other people's needs or discomfort. Jung would see this as a sign of inner alignment. Your outer behavior matches your inner truth. You are not performing openness. You are living honestly with what you feel. Keeping feelings private is not about distance, it's about integrity. Your inner world remains intact, steady, and whole, even when it stays unseen. Nietzsche would listen carefully to how sharing feelings is talked about, not how it is lived. He would notice the story that says openness is always healthy, always honest, always brave. In this story, feelings are meant to be visible. They are meant to circulate. They are meant to be offered, named, and received. Nietzsche would question that immediately. He would ask who benefits from this idea. He would notice how quickly privacy is turned into a problem. If you don't share, the story says you must be afraid, blocked, or hiding something. Silence is treated as absence, not as choice. In this story, being open becomes a moral good. Sharing is praised. Restraint is suspected. You are expected to explain your inner life so others can understand you, feel close to you, and feel reassured. Nietzsche would say this has very little to do with truth. It has more to do with comfort. When feelings are shared, people know where they stand. They know how to respond. They know how to place you. When you don't share, that placement becomes difficult. Others can't tell if you're fine, struggling, distant, or simply private. The story doesn't like that uncertainty, so it fills the gap. It assumes fear. It assumes coldness. It assumes something is wrong. Nietzsche would recognize this as a familiar move. When a value is questioned, the value defends itself by calling the alternative unhealthy. He would also notice how openness becomes a kind of performance. Feelings are shaped for sharing, softened, explained, made acceptable. Over time, people learn which emotions are welcome and which are too much. Nietzsche would ask whether this is really honesty or just another way of fitting in. When you don't share your feelings, you step outside that performance. You don't offer your inner life for validation or correction. You don't let it be shaped by reaction. The story struggles with that. It prefers visible emotion because visible emotion can be managed. It can be responded to. It can be judged. Nietzsche would say privacy threatens the story because it suggests that meaning does not require witnesses, that feelings do not become real only when spoken, that strength can be quiet. You are not saying the story is false, you are simply not living inside it, and that, Nietzsche would say, is often more unsettling than open rebellion. Refusing to share does not announce itself. It does not argue. It just leaves the story without confirmation. And when a story stops being confirmed, it starts to look less necessary. Arendt would watch what happens in everyday life when you don't share your feelings. Not in dramatic moments, in normal ones. Casual questions, friendly concern, the quiet rules people don't say out loud. In many spaces, sharing feelings has become a form of participation. You speak so others know you're present. You explain so the group feels smooth. You open up so nothing feels hidden or awkward. When you don't do that, something small but noticeable happens. The flow changes. The moment slows. People don't always know what to do next. Arendt would say this is not about emotions, it's about norms, about what a group quietly expects from its members. Sharing has become part of how belonging is shown. When you keep your feelings private, you're not refusing the group, but the group can feel refused anyway, because one of its rituals isn't being completed. You may notice people trying to help. They encourage you to talk. They say it's healthy. They remind you that it's okay to open up. Often they mean well. Arendt would notice how this pressure is rarely aggressive. It's gentle, repeated, wrapped in care. But it still asks for the same thing: visibility. Privacy interrupts that. It leaves something unfinished, and unfinished moments make groups uneasy. So explanations appear. People decide what your silence means. You're guarded, you're closed, you don't trust enough. These labels restore order. They make your choice easier to understand. Arendt would point out that social life prefers what can be seen and named. Feelings that are shared can be placed. Feelings that are private remain unclear. When you don't share, you don't give the group material to work with. You stay present but unreadable. And unreadability can feel threatening even when nothing harmful is happening. This is where quiet pressure grows. You may be asked again later, or in a different tone, or with others around. The goal is not to push you, it's to bring you back into the shared pattern. Arendt would say this is how norms protect themselves, not through force, through repetition, through making difference feel uncomfortable. But your privacy isn't a rejection of others, it's a boundary around yourself. You are still there, still listening, still connected. You're just not offering your inner life as a public space. Arendt would see this as a quiet form of resistance, not loud, not declared, just lived. By not sharing, you don't break the group. You simply remind it that not everything real needs to be visible. And that reminder, though silent, changes the space around you. Freud would listen for the discomfort that appears when feelings are not shared. Not your discomfort, but the unease that moves quietly between people when emotions stay private. When you don't open up, something unsettles the moment. Others may not name it, but they feel it. A gap, a missing signal. Freud would say this discomfort rarely belongs to the present moment alone. It carries older habits, learned expectations, early experiences where sharing feelings brought closeness, safety, or relief. For many people, expressing emotions became a way to regulate connection. You speak and someone responds. You share and tension eases. When you don't do that, the pattern breaks. People may feel unsure. They don't know if you need comfort. They don't know if you're upset. They don't know if they should step in or step back. That uncertainty creates unease. Freud would notice how quickly people try to fix this feeling. They ask again. They encourage you to talk. They frame sharing as healthy or necessary. This isn't manipulation. It's anxiety looking for relief. Silence leaves feelings uncontained for the other person. Without your words, they can't settle their own reactions. They don't know what to do with what they sense. Freud would say this is why privacy is often mistaken for repression, because unspoken feelings make others restless. It reminds them of moments when emotions were confusing, unresolved, or overwhelming. But inside you, something different is happening. Your feelings are not pushed away, they're held. You feel them fully, just not publicly. They move at their own pace, without interruption. Freud would recognize this as containment, not denial, a way of letting emotions exist without turning them into performance or explanation. There may be times when holding feelings inside takes effort, moments when words want to come out but don't. Freud would say that tension is normal. Not everything that stays inside is unhealthy. What matters is whether the feelings are felt, not whether they are shared. Over time, people around you may adjust. Some become calmer, others remain uneasy. Their reactions say more about their relationship to emotion than about yours. Freud would gently remind us that not every feeling needs an audience to be real. Keeping emotions private doesn't mean they are stuck. It means they are allowed to unfold without interference. Your silence isn't hiding pain. It's choosing where pain lives while it moves. And in that quiet space, feelings can breathe, change, and settle without being rushed into words.